And looks like someone has given us a comment on our last week. I don't very often get comments on this blog. I don't think anyone knows about this blog besides my students. Is there a comment here? Where'd the comment go? What's that? Oh, view comments. Here it is. Can I view comments? I guess not. Well, if it was you who made the comment, see me in office hours. Okay. What are we doing? Loops, writing macros from scratch. Okay, so we have a file to download for today, and that file looks a whole lot like this. So it turns out that if you are a professor, like a significant portion of the time that you spend at the behest of the university is to do some kind of service. And my significant service assignment is I am the academic scheduler for BYU Marriott. So like who decides which class actually gets to get taught in which room at what time? Like I don't make those decisions very often, except when there are people like 2 or 3 classes that both want the same room at the same time. Someone has to make that decision, and that's me. So this is like data that I've had to work with over the past, I guess I've been at it for more than a decade now. So here's some data from 2017, which just shows, what is this? So this is a term, this is fall of 2017. The building is Tanner 151. So this is, let's do the next one down, 251. This is our room. And it looks like they want to take accounting, looks like accounting 241 is scheduled for this. So that's the business law class. Have you taken it? How many have taken accounting 241 or another business law class? So it used to be required, like for every business graduate, not anymore. To me, that was like one of my, like the most valuable classes I ever took. Like I learned all about contracts in there, and like every time I signed a contract since then, I've used the knowledge that I learned in that class. But it's got to get taught somewhere at some time, and they're hoping to be able to teach it here at 8 o'clock to 9:15 on a day called TR. What do you suppose that means? TR, what does that mean? What do you think this one means? MW. Monday and Wednesday. How about this one? Yeah, Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah, you can't put PT because you wouldn't know if that was like taught twice on Tuesday or whatever. So R is how you say Thursday here. So here is MTWRF, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Some are Friday only and so forth. Now, as it turns out, like all the data that we need to be able to schedule is right here. But this, like this data as text is really difficult for us to be able to know when 2 classes are in conflict with each other. Are they taught at the same time? Like trying to look at these times and combine them with these days and understand, are these, do we have any conflicts in the schedule? Here, looking at this, really, really difficult. And so what our goal for today is just to kind of see, kind of an example of taking a problem and just writing from scratch. There's nothing that we can record here to get us to solve this, but just kind of writing from scratch to be able to visualize this data. And we kind of have built out over here, starting in column O, like some columns that we've kind of set up to be like from 8 to 5 p.m. And what I want to do for this, ultimately what I want to achieve for this one is, let's see, starts at 12:30 and ends at 1:45. So 12:30 would be there to 1:45 should be right there. I would like to just like automatically highlight that, like to color the background color of that cell. So I could say that is when that's taught, and maybe use a different color for Monday, Wednesday classes than I have for Tuesday, Thursday classes. And so as I look at this, I can have a visual representation of when these things are taught so that I can like just have a better feeling of this data. So we're going to be looking at this data here, and we're going to be figuring out which cells to be able to change the background color of. Let's give it a shot. So I'm going to open up my code, and I have here a module already here with a sub procedure called make schedule. That's great. That's a really good start we have. In fact, I think what I'd like to do is let's just go ahead and kind of quickly put in here a loop that will, I'd like to kind of decompose this problem a little bit and say, let's first make a loop that will kind of go through and kind of look at each one of these one at a time, but then we'll just send the information to a different procedure to actually do the scheduling. So let's start off just by making a loop to do that one. I think I'm just going to use a do loop for this. So let me dim R as a long to keep track of which row I'm looking at. We'll start R at 2, and then we will do until, and it looks like, I'm just going to assume that we're on the active sheet right here. So do until cells, row number R, column number 1, till that value we'll do is empty. Do until is empty, that. Oh, loop, this is a do loop. So a couple things I want to make sure I do inside this loop. Someone tell me one thing that I should do in this loop. Just yell it out. Do events, D-O-E-V-E-N-T-S. Anytime I make a do loop, I want to put do events in there, E-N-T-S. I might, like once I actually get it working, I might take it out, especially if I know this code's going to have to run on a Mac, because do events really takes a little bit of extra time on a Mac. It can really slow things down. Not so much on the Windows environment, but I may take it out once I know I've got my loop running smoothly. And then what else do I have to do to actually give myself a way out of this? Something else I better do in here. What is it? Yeah, increment R. R equals R plus 1. R equals what its current value plus 1. So R is going to take on a new value. What's the new value going to be? Its current value plus 1 more. And why don't let's just do this. Let me go ahead and make another sub procedure here called schedule 1. Let's see. You have a schedule 1. So it's a sub procedure, and I'm going to accept the row that's being sent to me as a long. I could call this R just as well, but just to show that it doesn't need to be named the same, I'm going to make it a different name. So the idea here is that I'm going to call schedule 1, and I'm going to pass it R. This variable I've declared here called row is going to receive the value that I passed down by R. And so if I do a debug.print of row here, it should just print off the row numbers that we have data. Well, the variable is called R up here above. I'm calling it row down here. And the trick is that when I call schedule 1, I'm sending it R. That value gets received by this variable row. And so we'll print row here. So if I run this now, I'd expect to see 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 55 for this data set. I'm going to save my work just before I run it. Anytime I have a new loop, I like to save it. And that's exactly what it did. Ran 2 through 55. So I've got my structure now set up here. And so now I'm ready to actually do the work. Now, but the nice thing is here that now I just have to think about one row. I'm on one row, and I don't have to think about what the next row is or any of this loop around here. Just ready to go with one row. And in fact, the other thing that this lets us do that's kind of slick is that I can say, you know what, while I'm doing the debugging, ultimately when this thing runs, I want it to do everything. But here while I'm debugging, I'd like to just be able to say, you know what, I want to practice on maybe row 4 or something. I can just make another sub procedure. I'll call it my sub runner, SBU. And I'm just going to call schedule 1. This is just for debugging. This is why I'm doing development here. I'm going to say, I want to start working on row number 4. So call the schedule 1 sub procedure, send it a 4, and that will get me going on this. And I'm going to do one more thing here, and that is, instead of calling it sub runner, I'm going to call it something that's alphabetically low, ACME, my Acme sub runner. The reason is because while I'm working on my code down here, if I just say, hey, I'm working on schedule 1, my insertion point is in schedule 1. If I hit the play button, the Visual Basic editor is going to say, well, what do you want to play? Because you can't play schedule 1. Why can't I just run schedule 1 here? Normally, if I'm here and I click execute, it just executes whichever one is I'm currently working on, where my active point is. But if I'm working on schedule 1 down here and I say, I want to play, run the macro, it says, which one do you want to run? Why does it ask me for this one? What's so special about schedule 1 that I can't just run it? Can you see what it is? Go ahead.
Because it has something in the parentheses.
Exactly right. It's because I have this variable declared here inside the parentheses. It is a special kind of variable called a parameter. Because I've declared a parameter here, I can't just run it, because to run this, I've got to tell it what's the value that this variable takes on. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying call schedule 1 and send the value 4 into that variable. Well, the nice thing is, if I've made this alphabetically small, like close to the front of the alphabet, if I'm over here and press F5 or click on the play button, then that's the default one that comes up. So that's just kind of a nice thing. I'm down here, I can just hit play and then hit enter, and it will run that particular procedure. But this is really just for development. Is row 4 a good one for me to work on? Yeah, I don't mind it. 11 o'clock a.m. and it's Monday, Wednesday. That looks great. Okay. So now is kind of when I get to the point, I've got a task to do, and I don't know how to get there. I know ultimately what I want to see is I want to see some colored bars showing up over there on the right-hand side of my spreadsheet. But how do I get there? And the truth is, I don't really have that much to work with. It turns out that there are only a few different operations that I can actually do in computing. One thing I can do is I can write a value into memory, like let it sit there and call it back later. That's like a fundamental operation, putting something into memory and then like reading and writing to memory. That's one thing I can do. And we do that with a structure in VBA called a variable. Yeah, we create variables, we assign values to them, bring them back. That's like one of the building blocks that we have. Another thing that we can do is we can do math. Any kind of math that we want to do. I mean, ultimately, we can do addition. And if we can do addition, that means we can do subtraction, because what do? To do subtraction, you add a negative number. Yeah. And if you can do addition, you can do multiplication, because multiplication is just iterative addition. And if you can do subtraction, you can do division, because division is just iterative subtraction. And so kind of all of our other math is built up from the fundamental capacity of being able to add two numbers together. So that's another kind of fundamental thing we do. We can do math. We can do branching, but I don't think we're going to do any branching in this one. We can say, look at some condition and decide to execute code conditionally. We're going to get to that before very long. But there's no just set of rules that if I just learned the rules, I could apply to this problem and apply those rules correctly. It'll put the output out. So I've got to be creative. I got to think about how am I going to do it. So I'm looking at row 4. Any thoughts? How should we start to work on this problem? And sometimes looking at the whole problem can be kind of daunting. So what might be the first thing that we should try to figure out? Trying to figure out how to do this. Like, what's kind of step 1 here? Go ahead.
Because I would want to figure out how I can change the background of cells.
Oh, okay. So you're saying, I don't know how to change the background color of a cell. How do we figure that out? Any thoughts? What should we do? Don't Google. Who said Google? Raise your hand, you Googler. You Googler. Are you an experienced programmer from another language? Oh, no. So that is usually the first go-to for folks that have like that's the way you do it in regular programming languages. But in VBA, we have a way better solution to do it. What is it? Record ourselves doing it. Right. Anything that we can do in Excel, we can do with VBA. It's probably not entirely true, but that's the idea. So I want to see how to do it and just record myself doing it. It's going to be pretty easy to write this code, but let's start off by doing that little exercise. So I'm just going to, maybe I'll highlight some particular range here and I'll record myself doing it. So I'm going to come to the developer tab, record a macro 1, that's a great name for it. And I'm just going to change the background color. How do I do it? Home tab, somewhere around here is, here we go, like font color, and here's fill color. Change it to some color here. I'll just do this standard color, red, loop. And I will stop recording. Let's go take a look at what it did. It's not as simple as you might think. It's a little bit more involved, but let's see what the code generated. All right. So here's where it says, with the selections interior, then, and it's like it did way more than necessary. It did something about a pattern color index. Oh, look at that, a color. Tint and shade pattern. This is probably the only one I need. But it looks like we've got like this idea here. I'm going to just move that right up here. So the dot color equals, I'll put that on the end. And then instead of the selection, let me do a specific cell. I'm just going to say, oh, I'll just leave it as selection. Selection. Interior color equals 255. Now, I think what that will do is I'll just come highlight something here. Run that code. There's my selected cells. Run this code. And if I've done that right, it should, yeah, just make that color back. That's interesting. So as it turns out, there are like more than 16 million colors, and they all get their own number. So you might be, there's like black is 0. I want to make it black, just make it 0, and that'll do it. I'll run that, and that makes black. So black is 0, that's nice. This one is a little bit creepy, but like if you were to say, you know, what is the devil's color, what would it be? Yeah, it would probably be dark red, 666. Let's just see if that's right. Sure enough, like that's crazy. 16 million to choose from. What are the odds? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. So, but there's a couple other ways for me to get at colors. So one, there are some constants that are predefined, VB green. Remember that variable and constants are really similar. They're both names for locations in memory that hold values. A constant is just one that you don't get to change. So VB green is like a color. I can go ahead and run this now, and it'll make it green. There's probably like blue and red. I don't know what all the VBs there are. But the point is, remember, there's like 16 million colors. So what is that green? Let me just kind of print that number off. 65,280 is that particular shade of green. You know, and if we did it like just one number off, it would look, you know, to your human eyes, it would look exactly the same. It's just a tiny, tiny shade different. But the other way that I can do this is there's a thing called a function called RGB. So the amount of red, green, and blue that I want to include. And so if I said, you know what, I want all blue, but no red or green, I would say red 0, blue 255, because the numbers are between 0 and 255, and then no green, 0. That will give me the number that represents that all blue. So I can either like do that in the immediate window and use that as the number that I'm plugging in, or I can plug in, like just use that function right there. So that should give me whatever pure blue looks like. Red, green, and blue. That's green. That's all green. So let's change that and put it on the blue portion. Blue, 255. So that's what kind of all blue looks like. What if I had all red and all blue? It should be like all purple, I think. Whoops. No, that's whatever. When I say all red and all blue, that's the shade that I get. All right. So that's how we can kind of specify some different colors. I like it. Okay, so we've accomplished that. I think that's a pretty good suggestion. We're going to have to know how to change the color. Now I can know how to change the color here. What else am I going to need to know? What's another part of this puzzle I'm going to have to put together to be able to get these to go in correctly? Okay, so we're going to need to know some information. Let's not worry about choosing a different color for the days of the week, but let's just figure out like the start and the stop time. So we're going to have access to those pieces of information. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to clear these off. So no fill. So I'm going to take this that I figured out over here in module 2. I'll bring it back into my module 1. And I think for now, let me just go ahead and put it in here, but let me comment it out. So I know that's something I'm going to need. That's setting the color. So I set that as a comment. So now I'm going to need to know something about when this thing starts and when it ends. In fact, why do I care about when it starts? What am I going to do with that information? I've got to go from a start time of, say, number 4 somewhere, of 11 a.m. And I'm going to take that. What do I have to do with that information? That's going to be definitely this is relevant information, but what do I have to do with it? I've got to use that to determine what? Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to show a picture here so I can see, which classes are taught at the same time. So if I have to move some around, I got to know, well, I can't go there because they're taught at the same time or whatever, but that's what I'm going to have to do ultimately. But how am I going to show it? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I got to figure out which square that goes to because this is 11. I got to transfer an 11 to be column 27. I think that's column 27. AA is 27. I got to convert like 11 o'clock to 27. I got to convert 11:30 to like 27, 28, 29. I can, let's see, let's do like 8 o'clock. I don't even know what O is. Is O like the 16th letter of the alphabet? I don't know. Let's just ask. Active cell. ACTIVE cell dot column. It's 15. So that's I got to convert an 8 to a 15. Oof. Well, let's at least start by trying to get the hour off. I'm going to have to treat the hour and the minute differently. So why don't we start off with that? So let me declare a couple of variables for this. So why don't we do start hour as, what data type should we use for our start hour? Well, so integer is pretty good. I could do one that's a little bit better. Do I need negative numbers? No negative starts. What's my biggest value going to go for hours? Well, maybe 24, depending on the way I think of it, but way less than 256. So what type could I use? Byte. Yeah, so remember, byte is a 1-byte integer. And minutes, kind of the same thing, 0 through 45 or maybe 59. So I'll do start min. All right, so I got to get the hour off of that date. So let me just do a debug.print of the start time. That's column I. So cells, row number, row that was passed in, column number I, dot address or dot value. And then I'll stop. I should be able to run my code now. And good, it's printed at 11 a.m. That's what I expected because my row 4 starts at 11 a.m. I've got that, but I've got to convert that to just get the hour. Now, one thing I could do is just like maybe kind of look for that colon and take whatever comes before the colon, but there are actually functions built into VBA that allow me to look at an expression of a time and ask it, what's the hour? What's the minute? If it's a more complex date, what's the year? What's the month? What's the day? And so to get the hour, there's a function called hour, H-O-U-R. And then I'm going to look at that string expression and just ask, what's the hour of that? And that's going to be 11. I'm curious to know if it's 11 p.m., what it would do. Ah, yeah, so it's giving me on a 24-hour clock. It's looking at that, and it's not just splitting that and taking what's before the colon. It's saying, if I look at that as a time, what hour is it? That's the hour that we're after. Excellent. So I think that I can just say my start hour, instead of printing this, start hour is equal to the hour of whatever is the value of that cell. But I better get onto one that has a minute involved. So let's 12:30 p.m. Why don't we do, I'm going to do line 14. And let's try that. Because I am going to want to think about this in terms of minutes. Okay, so I've got the 14, my start hour. I should be able to, in break mode, I should be able to look at my start hour. And that's number 12. Is that right? Yeah, 12, it's at 12:30. So let me just go ahead and start here to figure out which column 12 should be. Oof. So 12 should be this column right here, AE. Let's see, that's 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. So I've got a 12, I got to make that into a 31. I don't know how to do that. Any thoughts? Let's think about what's the difference between starting at 12 and starting at 1. Okay, so if I have a difference, this is kind of interesting. If I have a difference in 1 hour, how does that translate to a number of columns? Go ahead. Yeah, it looks like these columns are 15 minutes wide. And so if I want to think about actually where it's going to start is one thing, but I know that 1 o'clock or hour number 13 is going to be 4 more than hour number 12. So why don't we start off by saying my hour is going to, I'm going to say take my start hour, and I'm going to try to make a start column as well. So let me go ahead and declare another one, dim start column. Also as, I don't think I'm going to have more than 200. So I think I'm going to keep this in as byte as well. I'd be happy using integer for that one, but I think byte is fine. So let me just start off by saying my start column is equal to my start hour times 4. Okay, and at least now I think, even though I may not have them in the right place, at least 13, like hour number 13 is going to be 4 columns bigger than hour number 12. Let me go ahead and print. I'm going to print my start hour and my start column here. So start hour, start call. I'll stop my code and then run it again. And so when I'm looking at line number 14, start hour 12 is column number 40, is giving me 48. We'll kind of look at where that is here in just a moment. But let me just see that if I've got one that's 4 off, so 11 o'clock is number 4. Let me run number 4 and see what it produces. Yeah, that's good. So when it's 12, it gives me 48. When it's 11, it gives me 44. That's good. But where do I actually want these to go? 12 should be, let me just ask what the cell column of the active cell is. Print active cell dot column. So it's 31. So when it's, right now it's producing 48, and I want to get that to be 31. Is it just as simple as subtracting that off? It's 48 minus 31. 48 minus 17. Does that have to subtract 17 off it? Let's just see if that's right. Let me go ahead and do that multiplication and then subtract off 17. Okay, so I'm looking at schedule 4, so this should be 11. 11 o'clock is giving me column 0. That's no good. Oh, it's because I said equals. That should be a minus. So 11 is giving me 27. 11 o'clock. Oh, yeah, because Z is 26. 11 is 27. Let's just see if when I do 12, it gives me back 40. Or was it supposed to be 31? Yeah, that's giving me 31. Okay, so far so good. I like it. Questions? So right now I've handled the hour, but I also have to handle the minute. So that's going to give me the hours for that. Let's look at one that's got minutes on it. So here's one that's 12:15. That's number, oh no, I gotta look for a start time. Here's one that's 12:30. I'll do that as number 12. So when I run this as a 12, row number 12, I got to get, this is pulling the hour. This is still going to give me 31 because it's a 12 o'clock hour. But I got to move it over for a number of minutes. So let's go ahead and get my start minute figured out. That's going to be just like doing my start hour. So I'll just copy that line and do start minute. And instead of the hour function, there's one called the minute function. Just going to go take a look at that. Print off the minute of 12:30 p.m. So yeah, that tells me that's 30 minutes. But now, how am I going to convert my minutes into a number of columns? Because my hours, each hour is 4 columns. So I was multiplying that by 4. So what am I going to do to convert my minutes? Go ahead. Divide by 15, right? Because if I've got like 30, which I'm trying to do here, if I got 30 minutes, I got to move over 2 columns. So divide by 15. So my start column is going to be this expression plus my start minute divided by 15. Now, the problem I'm a little worried about this, if I have something that's not a multiple of 15, and I might have fudged this data so that they only end on multiples of 15. Nope, we got a 450 right there. So that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Let's just do this. Let's just convert that to an integer. So there's a function called cint that says, if it gets back something that's not an integer, just make it into an integer. I don't know if it's going to go the right way, round the right way or the wrong way, but we'll take a look at it once it does it. So that should give me the start column that I'm after. So let's just see. I'm on 12. 12 is like 12:30, right? Row 12 starts at 12:30. So this one should give me, there's 31, 32. It should start at 33. So I'm expecting a 33 when I run that. Yeah, got me to 33. And of course, if the start minute is 0, that's going to 0 out. So it'll just be the start hour. So I think we're in good shape. So now I've calculated my start column. What else do I need to be able to figure out? So I know this is going to start here. Just also got to figure out my end column. There's a couple ways I could do the end column. One is I could just calculate the end column the same way I'm calculating the start column. The second approach would be to say, you know what, I've got my start column. I just need to know how many columns to move from that. So I could find out the difference between these 2 times in minutes and then divide that by 15. And that would tell me how many columns that I want. But that seems like I've already got an algorithm that calculates the ending column. So let's just do that. In fact, I'm going to give you an unusual thing. I'm going to give you an in-class exercise. I'm going to take what I've got right here, and I want you to calculate now the end column. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that. Like, it's the one common request in the student evaluations is, please give us something to do during class once in a while. Well, here it is. Here's your in-class exercise. We've got the code up here. Just duplicate whatever you want. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to do a 5-minute timer. Google used to give me a timer, like a real timer. 5 minute. Guess we're doing the YouTube one.
E-commerce pioneer.
Okay, there's the code and the timer. Show me your confidence in being able to do this. 0 to 5. 5, 5, 5, 4, 3. Okay, see what you can do. You have a question about something while you're doing this, raise your hand and I'll come and take a look. Mhm. Now 3/5 of your way through, 2 minutes to go. All right. How many of you said, you know what, I totally got that done in 5 minutes? It's a few of you. How many of you say, you know what, I'm almost there and it's a few more minutes, I'd totally be there? A few more be like that? Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at how I might do this. Well, the fact that this is so similar makes me think that I'm going to want to just, you know what, duplicate my variables and just change start to end. Then also duplicate this other code, change it, say start and end. Maybe I'll do them by hand. Start, end. And hour, and minute, and column. Start hour, now my end hour, and minute, and column. This is looking at my start hour, so I'll change that to my end hour. Start minute, changed it to end minute. That looks pretty good, except I got to look in a different column. So instead of column I, H-I-J, I think it's column J. All there is to it, read the hour out of column J, read the minute out of column J, set the end column to be the end hour. It's kind of the same math that we had on the other one. Well, start hour, end column. They'll just go ahead and print off those again as well. End column and end hour. Just see what I get. I don't know. Right now I'm on row number 12. So my end hour should be 3 o'clock. My end column ends at 3:15. It should be somewhere in here. AQ. I don't know what AQ is. 43. All right, let's see what we got. I'll run this. It looks like I got 44. Starts at 12, which is column 33, or no, starts at 12. Actually, I think the easiest way to look at this would be just to actually get this coloring those. I think now I want to actually get it coloring the range. So I've got my start call, my end call. Well, this is going to take something that we're going to get into in more detail, I think maybe the next time or the time after that we meet, where we actually look at ranges in specific. But I need to be able to come up with a multi-cell range that starts at a particular cell and ends in a particular cell. So let's take a look at this. So if I know the row that I'm after, let's say I'm trying to actually put in whichever one is right here. So my row is row 2. I want to start at 12:30. So that's going to be 33. So row number 2, column number 33. That is my first cell. If I got that right, AG2, is that where I want to start for 12:30 class? Yeah, AG2. And then my end cell for this one is 145. So that's going to go right up to there. 1, 2, 3, 4 more. So that should be 37. AK2, is that right? Yeah, that's where I want it to end because that would be at 45. Okay, but now what I have to do, so I now have, I've addressed the 2 cells like with what I could work with, right? I know the row I'm working on because that gets passed in. I've calculated my start column and my end column. So now I just have to be able to make one range that starts in that cell and ends in the other cell. And it turns out that you're probably already familiar with the range method, where you say, oh, I'm talking about like A15, but there's another version of this that says, instead of giving it a string, you give it a start cell and an end cell. So instead of asking for the address here, I'm just going to get back to that cell. That's a reference to those two cells. So I want to print range starting at that cell, comma, ending with that cell, closing the parentheses. So now I'm calling the range method and I'm passing in those two cells, and I want to ask for the address of the range. And that says, yeah, I figured out the range you're talking about. It's AG2 to AK2. So now I should be able to, like, let's just go ahead and set the color with that. So before we were saying selection.interior.color equals something. Now I'm going to say range, like that range dot interior dot color equals something. I'll just use the devil's color. Ugh. That should highlight that range, should change the background color of that range. 1230 to 145. I like it. So now I just need to get something really similar to this happening here. But instead of always looking at row 2, what row should I look at? Yeah, row number row. We passed that in. So look at the row variable for the row. And we're going to start at the start column, which is start call, and at end call. And maybe I'm done stopping there, at least for now. So now when I pick a row, I'll just pick row 3 and see what it does. Let's see, row 3 starts at 8 o'clock, so it got the starting time right, ends at 9:15. But what does my end time say here? It says it's ending at 9:30. And I think, well, let's just do another one to check. Let's check this next one, row 4. I think I'm just going to be one off on all of these. This one, number 4, ends at 12:15 and it's ending at 12:30. Yeah, I think I just need to subtract 1 off of my ending column. So here where I'm calculating my ending column, when I'm done with all this, I'll just subtract 1 off of it. I'll try to run that again. Now that's ending at 12:15. So I think I'm in good shape. In fact, I think wouldn't be a bad time to like run the whole data set. I'll come back up to make schedule, which is already calling schedule 1. We'll just have it run the whole schedule out. Just check a few of these and make sure they look right. This one starts at 8 and looks like it ends at 10:45. Yeah, 8 to 10:45. How about this one? Starts at 9:30 and goes to 10:45. 9:30 to 10:45. I like it. Go back to the code and maybe make it visible.
So
Yes.
how did you make the code run the actual schedule and not the testing?
So to make run the whole schedule, I just went up to our make schedule procedure, clicked there and hit the play button. That was already making a loop that went through them all and called schedule 1 individually, passing the row number to it. All right, any questions before we kind of move on with this example? Yes. I think we can put the whole thing on. Just take up some blank lines. There's the whole procedure. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to just kind of thinking about the questions that I have to answer when I'm dealing with scheduling. It's not really meeting at the same time unless it's meeting on that particular day. So I think I want to maybe start this off by giving some way to specify the day that I'm interested in looking at. So I want to, let's maybe start off by clearing the background off of all of the cells. So I'll do that now as my very first step in this process. So I'm going to do this not in my schedule one, because I don't want to clear all of the background each time I schedule one, but when I run the whole schedule, I want to start off by clearing all of my cells. So before I get to this loop, here's how I refer to like the whole set of cells. Like cells without saying which cells I'm talking about, that's every cell on this worksheet. And I'm going to set the interiors. And interestingly, we use the color, we set the color property of the interior to give it its color. But there's no way to use that color property to get rid of the color, to say it's no color. At least none that I know of. But there is a color index property. In the olden days of Excel, you had 53 different colors that you could use for setting background cells. Like, I don't know when they made it 16 million, but it used to be 53. And those old 53 colors are still represented by this color index. So color index 1, 2, 3, and 4, kind of some simple colors that you can choose. But this one, if you set it to a constant called XL none, that will set it to no color. Like that makes the absence of any color, which is what your sheet starts off as. So now just to see that that works, I'm going to put a stop right here and run this code to there. That should have cleared off all of the colors, which it has. So that's good. But now what I'd like to do is I'd like to give some way to be able to say, you know what, I only want to see classes that meet on Monday. Show me just the classes that are meeting on Monday. Show me just the classes that are meeting on Wednesday. So if it's a class that meets Monday and Wednesday, it should show up on either one of those. And there are several ways that we could take that information in. One that our book talks about is like using a thing called an input box. So you run this and it displays a box and asks the user to type something in. I think there's almost never a good time to use that way. And it's just because I've got billions of cells that I could use for the user that I have access to. The user could put something in for me. And then they don't have to like be nagged every time it runs, like just hold the value that it had last time. So why don't we do this? Why don't we insert a couple of lines before this? We'll just insert a couple of blank lines. And maybe I'll just say weekday here. And I'll put in like a capital W to change. So now the idea is I'm going to look here in G1 to say, you know what, I'm looking for any class that has that, like that contains that day. That's what I want to actually display with the schedule. Well, I've shifted things down, so I'm now starting in row number 4, so I better make that change in my code. So now instead of R starting at 2, let's start R at 4. And it's still going to continue to go until it, like the loop is until it goes empty. So I don't have to worry about changing the ending condition. That will change automatically. But now I want to tell it we're only going to change the ones that have that weekday. And that's always going to look at G1. So I think I can just, down in my schedule 1, I can actually just look at G1 and decide what should we do. So I'm going to get rid of this stop statement and then go back down and work in my part. So the part that I need to do, so I don't need to do any of this unless column number H holds, like contains whatever the user has typed in here. Like if I said show the W's, I want to see it if it has a W in it. So that one should be there, that one should be there, all of those should be there, those should be there, that one should not be there. So I don't have to do any of these calculations unless column H contains what's in column G1. So let's just do that. In fact, we're just going to look and see if it doesn't contain it, then just get me out of here. No reason to do anything down in this part. Okay, so this is going to introduce something that we haven't seen before. Actually, two somethings. And we're going to get into both of these things in more detail in the coming sessions. But one of them is called instring, INSTR. Instring is a function that says, we're going to look for the occurrence of one string of characters inside another string of characters. And it says, where do you want to start looking? The first argument is, where do you want to start looking? I want to start looking at the first character. The second one is, what string are you looking at? And let me just kind of hard code this for right now. Something that says MTWRF, MTWRF. And I'm looking for just a W. And that tells me 3. What does that mean? It says it found this inside of this at the third character. By the way, if I told it don't start looking till the fourth character, it would say it doesn't find it. And that's how it says it doesn't find it, by returning 0. So this first number tells it where to start looking. I'm saying start looking there. Do you find a W? It says no. If I say start looking at the first position, it'll find it at the third position. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to put it after my dim statements, because the truth is these dim statements don't actually execute. Like when this sub procedure starts to run, the interpreter looks at it and says, let me look across this and find all the dim statements and allocate that memory. And then we'll start running. So there's no way to really bypass the dim. I could put the if above it, that would be okay, but it really wouldn't bypass the memory allocation. And so I'm just going to put it below, just because that's logically where it happens. Now, I'm going to use this to do a condition. I'm going to say if this equals 0. What does it mean if that equals 0? If this whole thing is true here, if instring returns 0, what does that mean? It didn't find the substring inside the main string. And if that's the case, then I don't want to do anything. If it doesn't find the W here inside what I'm looking at, I'm done. Then exit sub. Just like we can exit a do, a for loop, a do loop, a for each loop, you can exit a sub procedure early by saying exit sub. Now I just have to get this actually to look in the right place. Well, this is always the same place. So that is range G1. So we'll just look there. Range G1 dot value. And this one, I'll use cells to get at this one. Cells, row number row, column number H. That's column number 8. Or I could specify it as an H dot value. So looking in column H of whatever row we're on, I want to know if whatever is there contains whatever is in G1. And if it doesn't, that's when this will equal 0, then don't highlight anything. When it does, we want it to go ahead and highlight it the way it has in the past. So I think that will do it. Let's run it and see what we get. So this should be only showing the classes that are on meet on Wednesday. And I'll go back to my very top to run my make schedule. So here's a Tuesday, Thursday line, and that one should be completely blank. Yeah. So now I can glance at this and say, if I'm trying to find space for a class that only meets on Wednesday, those places are no good. Like those are the ones that are no good. Those are blocked out. That's pretty good. I could just redo this again as looking for something that I only want to see those that meet on Friday. Run that again. Apparently I'm stopped in my code or I'm editing or something. Now it's just the ones that meet on Friday. You can see the ones that meet Tuesday and Thursday, TR. No, that wouldn't catch this because it doesn't actually hold TR. So I'd have to get more sophisticated if I want to be able to show ones that meet Tuesday and Thursday. But this should just show the ones that meet Tuesday. Yeah, it's kind of a useful little thing. A nice little visualization to let me see what's available and what's not available on particular days. Okay. Questions? Yes.
If you want to just fill out the entire schedule like you did at the beginning, how would we have to set up weekday to say that any day this is how to fill it?
Oh, how we do any day. So it happens that if you search for a zero length string, like an empty string, I think that is always going to return it, find it at the first character. So that will never be zero. So I think just a weekday of blank would do it. I think, let's just see. Yeah. So it's kind of it seems like a little bit of a weird thing. Where does it find a zero length string? And the answer is it finds a zero length string everywhere. So the first place it finds it is a 1, not a 0. Okay, there was a question that came up earlier. Hey, what are the ground rules for doing projects versus doing homework? Can I look on Google for both of these? And the answer is yes. That's the way that you code. Like record yourself doing stuff, searching on Google, that is totally in bounds. If you were to, in your searching, if you were to find like the solution to the project, that would still be off limits, right? That would be, yeah, somehow someone posted this whole solution up. Someone did that once. Like I used to give a final exam that was like a coding final exam. And someone like posted my final exam on like a help site. Hey, how would I do something like this? And like some of the folks responded like, it sounds like your homework. Don't ask your homework here. But then someone else like answered it. Here's how you would do it. So that was uncomfortable. So yeah, if you find the actual assignment out there, that's off limits, and please let me know that it's out there. But otherwise, anything else is available. But what is the big difference between doing your homework and doing a project? First project's due tonight, right? Big difference is, yeah, you can talk to other people about both of those, but the difference is you can talk about code on homework. You cannot talk about code on projects. So, hey, how did you kind of get started on this? Oh yeah, I'll tell you, I recorded myself doing a web query and whatever, and you talk all about that. But actually sharing code is what is strictly forbidden on projects. And someone asked me a question at the beginning. I forgot what it was. What was it?
Yes, so it asks for the number or the.
Oh yeah, so
Today's number is listed in a cell that has a lot of information.
yeah, let me address that. So this whole fallen angel thing is not like a razor thin precision difference. Like the idea is we're trying to get the feeling. Has the market valued this company's earnings substantially more in the recent past than it does now? And so like if you're actually going to the current PE ratio on that page that the homework assignment suggests that you use, the current PE ratio is embedded in a cell that's got a bunch of other text around it. And we haven't really learned how to parse out text yet. But a few cells down, it's like yesterday's value, and that's going to be fine. Yesterday's value, or if it's today's Monday, so yesterday's value, it wasn't done yesterday. When's the last time it was done? Like last Friday, like when the markets were open. And so it would be just fine for this project to, instead of pulling the current value, to kind of go to the next most recent value, and that will make your code quite a bit easier. Okay, how many of you have already finished that project? Oh, really good. And how many of you have not yet started it? After all, it's not due till tonight. Yeah, so, okay. So you don't want to wait too long, because I go to bed early. I'm a morning person. I will probably be asleep by 9 o'clock tonight. I'm usually up by 3:30 or 4. It was a different time for this old fellow. So if you try to reach out like on the help channel, my phone will get a text message, but I won't hear it because it will be in a different room that I am. So yeah, probably don't wait till late tonight. I don't know if our TAs will be holding any time tonight. Usually they hold not till midnight, but sometime in the evening. All right, I think that's it. Thanks for coming 4 minutes early. I'm sure I'll claim those 4 minutes back sometime during the semester, but today you're getting out early. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed. Thank you. Thank you.